Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Anne Reardon, and today, due to popular demand, I'm going to be testing the Is Your Food Fake video by Blossom. So many of you sent me this video and said, we know it's probably not true, but it's causing doubts. First up, we have cheese. They have processed cheese with chemicals is difficult to melt, and natural cheese melts. Now, there are a couple of things to look at in this video. Number one is the wording. Processed with chemicals versus natural, assuming they're saying natural is good and processed with chemicals is bad. It's very interesting to note that processed with chemicals is something that a lot of people go, oh, it's got additives, oh, that must be bad. And it's generally when it's chemicals that they don't understand what they are or what they do. So if I said to you, most of the cakes that you buy and eat have the additive sodium hydrogen carbonate added to them to make them a little bit better, then you might get worried about that. But if I told you that sodium hydrogen carbonate is the name of baking powder, then you go, oh, that's fine. I know what baking powder is. I know what it does. It makes the cake rise, and without it, it would be flat and not very nice. So you're familiar with it, you understand it, so you're not scared of it. That's the same with most of the food additives and the food chemicals. They're added to the food for a reason, to change something about its property, to make it more palatable and nicer. If you want to add an additive to food that hasn't been used before, you just can't until that's in the food laws. And the food laws will test it and find out the amount they know is safe, and then that safe amount gets divided by hundreds or thousands, and then that's the amount you as a manufacturer are allowed to add to your food. So if even people bought 100 different foods with the additive in, they'd still be below the safe intake of it. So that's how additives tend to work. So not all additives are bad. Baking powder is a chemical additive, not bad. So don't go, oh, chemical additives bad. The other flip side of that is natural good. Is natural good? I mean, rat poo is natural and we don't want it in our food. Uranium's natural and it will kill us. The problem with natural is it's actually not been defined by law of what is natural and what isn't when it comes to food labelling. It's just such a hot debate as to what is and isn't natural, and it gets so complicated. I mean, the FDA in the US has asked for public comment on this. They've been debating this for years now and they still haven't defined it. So that should let you know how complicated natural is. So for the moment, if you see natural on a food label, it doesn't really mean anything. So just flip it over, read the ingredients and decide for yourself. But let's actually do this test. Let's actually get some cheese and a flame and see what happens. Okay, so we'll start with the cheese singles. And you can see that these do in fact burn. Don't do this at home because you might actually burn your fingers. You have to be very careful. But it does in fact burn when it's exposed to an open flame. Now, if we try with the natural cheese in front of the flame, it melts and drips down. So why is that? Blossom have implied by their video that was because of the additives and the chemicals in the cheese singles that it burned. But if we flip over the back of the packet, which is what I'm encouraging you to do, and read the nutrition information panel, then you can see that this one, the singles, per 100 grams has 18.9 grams of fat. Remember that number, 18.9, whereas the natural cheese has a fat total per 100 grams of 33.3 grams. So it's nearly double the amount of fat in one cheese versus the other, and it's the amount of fat that allows it to melt and is allowing that cheese just to flow over each other and just drip down. So the video really should look like this. Low-fat cheese burns under an open flame. High-fat cheese melts and drips down under an open flame. But that's not really a shareable, sensational type video, so that's not what they went for. They've kind of showed you an experiment and then drawn the wrong conclusion. If I told you the more firemen that attend a fire, the greater the damage bill. Therefore, firemen cause damage. Now you can see what I did there. I took a true fact, the more firemen that are at a fire, the greater the damage bill, and then led you to the wrong conclusion. And you knew it was the wrong conclusion. You knew that that's not the reason. That's exactly what they've done with the cheese. They've taken a true fact, one burns, one melts, and then led you to the wrong conclusion. Rice mixed with plastic bits to increase manufacturer profits. Surely plastic bits would cost more than rice itself. Rice is pretty cheap. This was disproved again and again. The reason why it had so much testing was because it kept getting traction on social media and going viral in different countries. Articles about it saying this is a hoax, this is not real, this is not a health concern, people don't need to be scared about this. But thanks Blossom for bringing it up again to do the rounds again. Baby food. These are ground up rocks advertised as fortified calcium. What do you think? Do you think this is true or is this false? There are some truths in here, so what do you think? Is this one a true one, and how do you tell? Well, let's get some baby food and put it into a bag, spread it out, and let me get a really strong magnet. This one can lift the whole jar, so it's pretty strong. I'm going to run it across the baby food, and absolutely nothing as expected. If I tip out some calcium lactate for you, you can see here calcium is just not magnetic. It is a mineral, but it's not magnetic, and it's usually white, not black. So that makes the whole video a bit sus from the beginning. So what did Blossom add to their baby food to make this video? I was just trying to think in my mind what was easy to get hold of that I could use for this. So I actually got a magnet and smashed it with a hammer into little pieces. And now I'm just going to drop that into my baby food and mix it through really, really well. And now I've just used my magnet to pull all those little pieces to the bottom so you can't see them. Now on camera, I can run my magnet across and you'll see that it pulls the black bits all the way over to the corner, and the magnet is attracting those little bits of magnet that I've added that weren't in the baby food right to the corner. This is just the definition of scaremongering. This is going to make parents worried that can they use the baby food from the shop? And again, let me reassure you, the food standard codes are so tight on baby food and what can be added. You can flip it over if you're concerned and check the ingredients. It will tell you exactly what is in that food. Next, we have vitamins on a tray in the oven. Synthetic supplements burn and natural ones won't. Now, they don't tell us what temperature their oven is. They don't tell us how long these are in the oven for. So I'm just going to randomly select some tablets, and tablets are really expensive. And then we're going to chuck them in the oven and film them, which really, this is the bit you wanted because this is the nice footage of watching tablets doing weird things in the oven. Ugh, my kitchen stinks, and I'm sure these fumes are not good for me. The first one, which has not burnt at all, but surely must contain some food colouring additives in order to get that red colour, is an iron tablet. Then we have a vitamin B tablet, then a probiotic which has gone brown on the inside. Next, a mega magnesium complex. And next to that, the impressive one, is an antibiotic. Not a vitamin, I know, but it's fun to bake. Next to that is esomeprazole. This is also not a vitamin, but just showing you something that is completely synthetically made, didn't burn at all in the oven. Next to that is Nurofen. Again, not a vitamin, but didn't burn at all. Then we've got fish oil, which heated up and melted its gelatin capsule and leaked everywhere. And then this one is burnt in bits, in little patches. It's actually a mixture of calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D3. So one of those burns and the others don't. And then we have a fully burnt to a crisp vitamin C tablet. Now the reason why that one burnt is because it has sugar in it, which some may argue is natural. And it's of course got sugar added because it's a chewable tablet, and without sugar added it would be gross. And then this tablet that went as big as a biscuit but didn't actually burn is an effervescent vitamin B complex. So according to Blossom's very unscientific test, these tablets are all natural and these two are the only synthetic ones in the bunch. So as you can see, chucking something in the oven and seeing what burns and what doesn't burn is absolute rubbish as far as a test for what is synthetic and what is not. Okay, next. We have some meat. This is not fat, it's actually glue used to bind unused meat scraps. Now this one is kind of based on a little bit of truth in a confusing way. So let me explain it. So meat glue, or transglutaminase, is an enzyme. And what it does when you put two proteins or two pieces of meat together, it helps them to bind together or stick together. It's used a lot in things like chicken nuggets, things that are shaped or formed into particular molds. It's also sometimes used in things like sausages, and those sliced meats like polony or Devon, they will have it in as well. What they've pictured here though is completely different. They've pictured it being used for like steaks and that sort of thing. So can it be used for that? Is it used for that? That's the question that we're looking at here. If we take little pieces of meat and glue it back together, then we've got the bacteria not just on the outside, but on the inside. So that meat can't be served rare. It would have to be well done, or it wouldn't be food safe from a bacteria point of view. So for that reason, we have food laws here in Australia, America, UK that say if you want to sell steak or anything that's been put back together, you must label this as formed meat or reformed meat. You can't just sell it and say it's a steak if it's not a steak. That's the law. So check your label. If it says it's reformed, it's got meat glue. Or if it says transglutaminase or TG in the ingredients, then it's got meat glue. I personally could not find any steaks or any roasts or anything that used meat glue, because most butchers are very proud of the fact that they're good butchers and they can cut up all their steaks perfectly and don't need to reform anything together. If they've got little scraps, they tend to serve them chopped up as things for stir fry or cubed meat, so you know it's just cubed meat. Or they can put it into sausages or something else. There's so many different ways meat can be served, hamburger patties, mince it up. There's not really any reason to glue it back together. But of course, because of videos like this, some people are very worried that their meat is glued together. I've seen videos where people look at meat and go, look, it's got different sections in it, so it must have been stuck together. But you have to remember this meat is coming from an animal, and animals have lots of different muscles, all joined together with connective tissue. So if you look at this piece of meat which does not have meat glue in it, you can see there are several sections. There's a bit there joined together by fat, and then here if we separate it, you can see the connective tissue in between it, and it's a very thin layer and it's quite strong. This is not meat glue. If you see this in your meat, this is connective tissue. Just for comparison, so that you can see the difference between meat glue and connective tissue, I've actually gone out and bought some meat glue for you so that we can make some meat joined together, or reformed meat, so that we can see the difference. So what I'm going to do is get some pieces of lamb and lay them on the plastic wrap and a strip of fat on one end there, and then just sprinkle that with a thin, even layer of the meat glue. Stack those pieces on top of each other. I probably should add a bit more on the edge there, but never mind. Add the fat on top and then tightly wrap the plastic around it, and you need to refrigerate that for 4 hours or more. Now while we're experimenting, let's do some strange stuff. Let's join together some pork, chicken, lamb, some fat and another bit of lamb. We'll sprinkle them well with the transglutaminase and then stack it up. Let's start with the lamb with the chicken on top of that, then the pork, some more lamb, and then the lamb fat, and wrap that tightly as you can so that you don't have a gap of air between the meat. And 4 hours later, our lamb now looks like one piece of meat. And when I slice it, that looks pretty good too. Now let's try cutting the Frankensteak. Look at that! Layers of different meat. That's fully weird. Now if we pull this, it pulls apart reasonably easily at the join, and you can see it's quite grainy or granular looking where the meat glue was. It's not like the connective tissue. You can definitely tell the difference. So what about when it's cooked, which is what they had in their video? Let's fry up one of these Frankensteaks. It stayed together really well when it was cooked. Let's slice through that. Oh, that's just wrong. Let me know in the comments if you think that's good or wrong. Oh my gosh. It's harder to tell once it's cooked. I mean, apart from the fact that we have the different meats here, the meat glue itself is pretty much invisible. So if you find chunks of white like they showed in their video in your meat, it's likely to actually be fat or connective tissue and not meat glue. The meat glue is put there in a really thin layer, and once it's cooked, it's virtually invisible. Next, we have ice cream. Put a squeeze of lemon juice on it. If it bubbles, it contains washing powder for shine and lightness. This rumour seems to have come from a gossip type website in India back in 2012. And when I checked on the Food Authority's website for India to see if there was any record of ice cream being adulterated using washing powder, there was no records there at all, not in India and certainly not in the rest of the world. Now, if you think about this, if you get some washing powder and you add an acid like lemon juice, it is indeed going to bubble up. The difficulty though is if you add washing powder to ice cream, washing powder itself has such a horrible taste, it's going to make the ice cream pretty inedible. So you're not going to sell any ice cream if you do that anyway. It kind of is a self-regulating issue there. But if you want to create a viral video or impress your friends to tell them you found washing powder in your ice cream, you just take a shot of you reaching a lemon over your bowl of ice cream, giving it a squeeze, then zoom into a closer shot and add a little bit of lemonade, which indeed does bubble up when you add it over ice cream. You could, of course, just add the washing powder at the bottom of the bowl, but then your ice cream would be inedible, and where's the fun in that if you can't eat the ice cream afterwards? Next one. All right, salt. Fake salt contains chalk that makes the water cloudy. Okay, so let's put some salt in water, and as you can see, it is a little bit cloudy. Now, if you flip it over and check the ingredients, which is what I keep telling you to do, the salt has a small amount of anti-caking agent in it. This is because if salt is finely ground, it tends to clump together, and when you tip your salt, you're not going to get anything out because it's going to be stuck together. So this is not fake salt, it is 97% salt and then 3% anti-caking agent, which allows the salt to flow over each other and into the glass, and that's that very small amount of cloudiness you're seeing. If you don't want anti-caking agent, you can get the salt that you grind, and then that is just 100% salt, and you can grind it in there. You can see it's not cloudy at all. So what you're seeing is the anti-caking agent. It is not fake salt. So if you look at that, it's kind of based on a truth. If it's got an additive to it, it's going to make the water cloudy. If it doesn't have the anti-caking agent, then your water's going to be clear. So it's kind of based on a truth, but then they've taken that to the wrong conclusion and highly exaggerated it, saying that the salt is fake. That is not true. So you can see how by mixing a little bit of truth with a little bit of lies, you can make a viral video because people are like, is that really true? And they get confused. This next one is really strange. They claim that the coffee with additives floats and the pure coffee sinks. Now, every reference I could find to this test has it flipped the other way round. So they've got it completely wrong in this case. The coffee with additives like chicory root or burnt sugar, which is sometimes added to make it bitter, that sinks. The additives will sink, whereas the coffee will float. So the coffee that floated should be pure and good, and the coffee that sinks should be bad. The problem with this test though is that sometimes pure ground coffee beans with nothing added can also sink. So if I grind up my coffee beans that I've got here and I put it on the coarse grind setting and then I put that onto the water, it floats. Now if I grind up some more of the same coffee beans, the exact same ones, and put it on super fine, then it tends to float for a moment and then start to sink. The finer the coffee grinds, the faster that will start to sink. The coarser it is, the more it will float. Nothing to do with good, bad, same coffee beans. Other things that can affect it are things like temperature of the water. The warmer the coffee beans or the warmer the water, it will sink faster than if it's cold coffee beans on cold water. An easy one to make it sink is slight agitation, just a little bit of a jiggle, and that's going to make that coffee sink regardless of all of the other factors. There are other things that can affect it as well, like the hardness of the water can affect whether the coffee sinks or floats on the top. Also things like the staleness of the beans, how long it's been since it was roasted. If they're stale, some people will say they'll sink. But then there's other people who've done experiments with two different types of beans, roasted them on the same day, same type of water, same grind level on the thing. One sinks and the other floats. So therefore that must be a difference then in the actual bean itself. So there are so many complicating factors in this. It is not a good reliable test of good coffee. The best thing for you to do is check your ingredients. Number 1, see if it's 100% pure. 2, see if you like the flavor. We're on to spices. Hold it over a candle. Pure spices will burn or ignite and impure spices don't. Don't you find it a bit weird how they're just trying to burn everything here? And all of the first part of this video, if it burnt, it meant it was bad. Remember the cheese, if it burnt, it was bad. If the vitamins in the oven burnt, they were synthetic. But now with spices, if they burn, it's good. And if they don't burn, it's bad. Like, surely this contradicts itself enough to let you know that the whole video is bad and it's not giving you good information. But let's have some more fun and see if we can set some turmeric on fire over a candle. Now, I've been holding this over the flame for a good 4 minutes and it's not getting close to igniting. I can get it to smoke if I take the candle right to the edge, but that's it. There's no way this is going to ignite. The only way I can get it to actually have a flame is to just give it a bit of a blast with a blowtorch. And even then it goes out pretty much immediately. Let me just watch theirs again. See here over the candle, nothing's happening. Then they move it away from the flame and away from the heat, and magically it ignites. It's as if there was a blowtorch just off camera that you couldn't see. The company that put out this video that owns the channel Blossom is First Media, who surprisingly also own So Yummy, who are the ones who, if you've watched my previous video about their videos, puts out fake recipes that don't work, can't work, just scientifically impossible, but because they get shared, because people go, wow, ice cream frosting made from ice cream whipped with icing sugar, that looks yummy, but it's physically impossible. I had so many comments on that previous video of kids who'd spent their pocket money buying ingredients to cook one of the So Yummy recipes and then them failing again and again, and they thought that they couldn't cook and they'd stopped baking. And after filming that video, I actually had one of the former video producers at So Yummy, he used to work for them, contact me, and I spoke to him on the phone and he said whether the recipes worked or not was never their concern. It was always about the pacing and the timing to make it a viral, shareable, watchable video. That was the concern. They'd refilm to get that just perfect, but whether the recipe worked or not, who cares? Now, this is not just limited to an issue with First Media. This is an issue across the whole of the social media platform. And the reason why it's an issue is because this sort of stuff is getting promoted by the algorithm. I think unless the algorithm itself changes, unless the platforms, Facebook and YouTube, take responsibility for what they're promoting, there's just going to be more of this because it works. It would have made them so much money because it got so many views. So that tells other companies we should try and deceive and do fake stuff because that's going to work. It's going to get us views. Whereas previously, if a newspaper did that, then they're not going to get views. They're going to get shamed and shut down and less people are going to buy their stuff because it's not true. Whereas in this case, YouTube and Facebook keeps promoting these same channels, these same producers, even though you go, but they're deceiving the public. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think the solution is? I actually just don't know what the solution is. You try and solve the problem of viral videos on social media not being true. I'll leave that up to you. With thanks to my patrons for sponsoring this channel and making videos like this possible, paying for meat glue and ingredients and all the things that go into making a video. If you'd like to join them, you can go to patreon.com/H2CT and join them there. You can check out some of my other debunking videos here and some recipes that actually work here. Subscribe, turn on the bell, make sure notifications are switched on your phone and all those things you have to do to get notified nowadays. Make it a great week and I'll see you on Friday.